Hello, Tracy Wiedrichs from Bismarck, North Dakota. We're here in my messy shop. Going to discuss my 56 Chevy that I've had for over 40 years. Got my first car, I think, when I was 15. It was a 49 Chevy, and kind of promptly traded that to my brother for my first 55 Chevy, and then ended up with a 57 Chevy and wanted a 56. So I went to a town nearby and picked this 56 up in February of 1984. Drove it home with a 283 and a turbo 400, and over time had almost every engine they made, from 265, a couple 283s, 327, a couple 350s, even a 396 big block for a while. I went to body school in 1985, 86, and that's all I had to drive all winter long in North Dakota winter, with a 283 and 4-speed, and never let me down. And through the years tried to sell it, and just couldn't sell it. Nobody wanted 56s, so just kind of kept the thing, and then took it apart like in 87, and after I was out of body school, I went to work for Don's Auto Body in Stanton, and Don was a good old boy, almost like a dad to me, and he let me work on this thing, after hours and sometimes during hours, and that's pretty much when I took it apart and started working on it. And I had this car. I went on a bunch of different projects in between. In fact, once I bought a 4-door in Bismarck just for a parts car. It was an identical car, just a 4-door. Hauled that home, was going to cannibalize, and then realized it was too nice of a car, so I ended up painting and fixing that up, and so that put the 2-door off for a couple more years too, and while I played with that car. But in between, so this 56 has been I don't know how many cars that came and went, so it was just an on again, off again project that just never kind of quit on it, but just never kept on it. So it's finally nice to see it kind of going on the road again after all these years. At one point, during the pro street craze, I was gonna back half it and tub it, and had a 57 Ford 9-inch in there and a 427, and then over the years, moving and building new shops and all that, and just decided that I didn't really want a big block. I had even notched the firewall at one point for clearance, and then years later, when I put a small block in, I had to undo a lot of that. I'm really glad I didn't tub it now, because I don't know, I like it the way it is, but the car itself was pretty nice. The rockers were kind of beat up from probably going over stuff. There really wasn't too much rust in it, but I did replace both rockers and the front part of the lower quarter on the passenger side. The driver's side rear quarter behind the wheel had quite a bit of mud in. Me and Dale Jacobson hammered that out, and I think we had 22 shrink spots in that, and ended up straightening that out really nice. But the rest of the car was really nice. I mean, some of the floor braces I had to replace, but the floor itself, probably fixed the size of a quarter in the floor itself. It was just really a solid car. And like I said, I did the body work, and then had Brandon Wald from Bismarck painted it. I had a 64 Chevy he wanted, just a nice original driver car, so we made a deal. I hired him to kind of to paint it and trade for this car. And he actually had never painted a car, I don't think, before that, and he insisted that if he painted it, he wanted to paint it piece by piece, which I kind of wanted to bolt it all together. And he said no, he'd rather paint it panel by panel, and I'm really glad I listened to him, because I think it turned out a lot better. And for a first time painting a car, I mean, I couldn't ask for a nicer job. It turned out excellent. And from there it went to Brandon Wald, or Brandon Barth I should say, who cut and buffed it. And that made the big difference too. I mean, it just made it a lot smoother and brought the shine out on everything. So that owe a lot to these two Brandons. They both were instrumental in helping get the thing back together. But guy needs a little help every now and then. And the motor is a punched out 350 that a friend of mine gave me. He was going through cancer treatments at the time and kind of found out he wasn't going to make it, and he had this motor and he insisted I take it, and I really didn't want it. I had a 350 built for the 56, but I took it home and his son had pulled the intake off it and it had gotten some moisture in, so I took it apart just to clean it up and realized that it was freshly punched out. It was 40 over, but you know, it had smogger heads on it, and so I called my buddy Dean Brecht, who's built quite a few motors for me, and to ask him if he had any good camel humps, and he says, yeah, I can build you a set. And he says, what are you doing? I said, well, I got this 350 that's punched out 40 and clean it up and put some camel humps on it. He starts giggling and he says, well, I've got a whole kit here for a 40 over 350 I'd sell you for cost. So I says, well, figure up what you need for everything and let me know. So he calls me back, and too good of a deal to pass up, so I just took the whole thing up there and we freshened it up, so it was basically like a 357 now, and it's got a pretty wild cam in it, but the motor was free from my friend, so kind of every time I drive it I get to think I read, so it was kind of a neat deal how it ended up. But it's been a really good engine, runs good, and thanks to Dean, he's done 2-3 motors for me, and his are always pretty trustworthy, so it worked out good. Also want to mention my neighbor Dave Vaughn. He does upholstery work, and at one point I had bought a kit from Ciadella back in 2000 and had the seat covers put on by upholstery shop in Mandan, and in 2000, and he had told me when I was ready for the headliner he'd do that for $100. Well, I didn't think it would take me 24 years later. But anyway, at one of my uncle's funerals, I was sitting with one of my cousin's sons, and he asked me how the 56 was coming, and I said, well, I'm just about at the point where I'm going to have to either teach myself how to put a headliner in or find a good upholstery guy, and there isn't a lot of them left around our area. And my cousin Bob looked at me, he says, what do you mean you got the best upholstery guy in the county in your development? I said, well, who's that? And he said, well, Dave Vaughn, and he lives right around the corner from me. I'd never even heard of the guy, so looked him up, and lo and behold, yeah, he put my headliner in, and he had never done a headliner at Tri-5, and he knocked it out of the park, and has since become a really good friend, and he does a lot of my son's motorcycle seats and stuff too, and he's done seats for my El Camino since then too, and he's a master at his trade, so I want to thank Dave for that too, because I really would have been kind of lost there. I don't know what I would have done, but it's good to have a good guy like that in your neighborhood. So. I was working at the plant part-time and working with the painter, and he had one of them new Mustang's '83 Mustang with the hopped up 302, and he was just insistent that we go run this thing, and I had just made the mounts and everything and ordered headers, put a big block in there, and had the 386 in there. I didn't even have the radiator support in it, and I backed out of the shop one night to let it run, and here he comes by and, let's go run this thing, Weed. And I said, I haven't even tuned it yet. Well, he wouldn't quit, so next thing you know, we went out on the highway, and we lined up, and I dumped the clutch and first, second gear, and I was just hammered him, but the radiator was coming back and kind of kissing the fan, and I could see the antifreeze on my windshield, but I figured, well, it's do or die, and by third gear I hammered him just bad. And that thing was pretty hot, that little Mustang. Come to find out later, that 396 had kind of a bad ring on number 7, so I was kind of even. It was only a 3 1/4 horse 396, but on that little 56 it really ran, and it was enough to beat a Mustang, and that was all that mattered to me. But it was kind of crazy how. And back then, we'd stand on the cowl with a sledgehammer and beat the firewall back so you could get the 396 in there. That's kind of the way things were done back then. They were kind of collectible cars ready then, but not like they are now, But over the years, we've gotten a little more fussier about how we do things, I guess. But at the time, that was kind of standard procedure. So, but that was just one of the fun times I had with it. And kind of wrapping things up, I want to thank everybody that's helped on the car. From my son Lee, he was helping a lot when we had the body off the frame, and the two Brandons, the paint and cut and buff. And definitely want to thank my wife for being there and supporting me on it and putting up with long hours in the shop. And she was pretty much there when I got it in 1984. We were just dating at the time, and I guess I mentioned earlier that many times I tried to sell it. And I remember one time my mother-in-law, who's since passed away, she found out I had it for sale, and she just says, "You ain't selling that car, you better keep that one." And I'm so glad I kind of listened to her, because I think I would have let it go, but thanks to her, she just seen something in that thing that I should hang on to it. So I kind of owe a lot to Addie. So, but yeah.